Get Gutsy episode number 90 with Amanda Berlin on The Media Needs Your Message. Welcome to Get Gutsy. I'm your host, Jenny Fennig, and I am so excited to be on this journey with you. A cutting-edge show blending business and spirituality, Get Gutsy serves up a potent blend of stories, lessons, and tips to help you make a massive impact in the world through your soul's work and your inspired life. No more going it alone, no more excuses. The world needs more brave women saying yes to leadership. Are you with me? Good. Let's get gutsy now. Hey everybody, welcome back to Get Gutsy. Wow. I love having this opportunity to hang with you. It is really just one of the highlights of my business. It's funny, I was actually having a conversation with a newer buddy of mine. Recently was invited to be part of this mastermind for successful online entrepreneurs, and one of the gals is launching her podcast, and so she had some questions about how many episodes and who to launch with and and of course she's getting very different advice, and I said, welcome to life, where you get conflicting advice about everything. And in the end, you have to go with your gut. And she sent me a message soon after that and told me she dreamt about what she needed to do and who she needed to launch with. So thank you. She thanked me for my insight around that. And she just said how excited she was about the podcast. And it brought me back to that moment in time where I was, launching this. It was almost a year ago now. I was launching Get Gutsy. And honestly, you reach these points in your business, kind of highs and lows, and sometimes you reach lulls where you've experienced success, you're very grateful for that, but you're kind of getting antsy. You're kind of getting a little bored, like doing some of the same stuff. Even when things are going well, you're like, what else? What else is there? I want to have more meaningful conversations. I want to be talking to people who are, at my level and beyond. I want to stretch out. I want to expand my network. And that's definitely what the podcast has allowed me to do. So thank you so much for listening. Today we have a fantastic guest. As I was preparing for the episode, I realized, wow, her and I have so much in common. And it's going to be like scary fun to explore that during today's episode, because we both have a background in New York City public relations. So this episode is for those of you who realize, hey, you gotta be committing to a PR strategy. You gotta get out there. You can't be the best kept secret. Absolutely not. If you want to grow your spiritual business online, you want to touch lives, PR needs to be a piece of your mix. It's not that complicated. You just need to know what's up. So let me tell you about our guest, and we're going to dive right in. After more than a decade in the New York City public relations world, Amanda Berlin now uses her pitch powers for good. She helps entrepreneurs pitch themselves to the media and get coverage that grows their businesses. Amanda believes that we all have something important we're putting out there into the world, and it is our responsibility to raise our voices so the people who need us can find us. She's the creator of Pitch School and the host of the Pitch podcast, which I know we'll hear more about on this episode. Amanda, it's so fantastic to have you on the show. I feel like, when you have this PR background, it's like we're kindred spirits.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jenny. I'm so excited to be here and to dive in. And I love what you said leading up to the intro, that if you want to grow your spiritual business, that it's part of your responsibility. That's totally my philosophy. It's part of our responsibility to put ourselves out there. And it's the worst feeling when you've built something and they haven't come yet. Mm-hmm. And so that's really kind of what inspires me day after day, is that I want to empower people who are doing really good, soulful work to have a greater voice, because God knows there are enough people out there with loud voices who are not putting beautiful things out there into the world. So let's, counteract that in some way.
Yes. Well said. Well said. It's kind of like the loudest person gets the attention. It's like when you were in school, the loud mouths, the ones who talked a lot. And it's like, okay, that's always going to be the case. But, those who are listening to this show, those who are really part of this tribe, we're doing good work in the world, like really quality, high value, empowering, like we're healers, we're light workers, we are leaders. And I want to know more about your background in PR, like what led you, because I come from that world, and I know for me when I discovered it in college, because I never heard about public relations until I got to college, and it wasn't my first major by any stretch, because I didn't even know what it was. Once I found it, I was like, oh my God, like I felt like, oh, these are my people. These are my people. Where have you been all my life? So how did you discover public relations, and how did you land in New York City to pursue that career?
Sure. Well, interestingly enough, my university didn't even have, I don't even think that PR was a major at that point. There was a marketing major, but I was in the School of Media and Public Affairs. I went to school in Washington, D.C., and I was in the School of Media and Public Affairs. It was a wonderful experience being in, one of the media-centric capitals of the country.
Yep.
Of course, it was very politically oriented, which wasn't necessarily my thing, but it was a great school, and I majored in journalism, incidentally, because I loved writing, and I was like, this is a practical application of my love of writing, ever practical. And I went back I grew up in this part of the country in the New Jersey, New York area, and I went back up north, and I wanted to find a job in television, and I kind of stumbled into this like hybrid of news and PR, which was interesting because my first job out of school, I was producing press junkets essentially for the TV network. So what would happen would be that we had a very small team within a larger company that did all different kinds of media, but the little branch that I worked in did these press junkets, and my boss had relationships with every network in New York, and they would send us their talent, and we would be responsible for getting that talent on television across the country. And they would do these interviews via satellite, interview after interview after interview, publicizing their latest project, the network's latest project, with the talent as the spokesperson.
Network, like which networks?
ABC, NBC, Lifetime, Bravo. Bravo was just starting at that point. I'm dating myself. But so, for example, this was like my most amazing. I met a lot of really interesting celebrities through that job.
Sure.
But just by way of example, I'll give you like my favorite one. So every time there was like a mini series or they were launching a new TV show or a reality show, they would send us the person who was going to publicize it. So ABC did years ago a mini series on the band Wings, which was Paul McCartney's band with his wife, Linda McCartney. And it was around the anniversary of her death, perhaps. And so they sent us Paul McCartney
nice.
to do these interviews. And so, it kind of it's a good example in that as well. It shows how easy it is to do PR and publicity for the rank of celebrity that I was dealing with. So it wasn't really that typical foray into or like initial introduction to PR because I was dealing with people like Paul McCartney, like I met Glenn Close and Anderson Cooper and Holly Hunter.
Yeah, like every network, every publication.
Exactly.
Like, yes, please. We would like to interview this person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not
nice
that
pitch.
hard. Yeah. Right. So that was kind of my introduction to PR, was this like press junket type of thing. We called them satellite media tours.
Yep. I used to do satellite media tours. I'm like, woo, going back.
Yeah, exactly. That's such an inside baseball term, though.
SMTs, yeah.
SMTs, yep, exactly. But that became my niche in the PR world. So from there, I went to a really big agency that had an internal department that did this kind of electronic publicity. And so instead of, they had some entertainment clients, but largely in New York, it was very pharmaceutical based and very consumer product.
Which agency?
Yep. Edelman.
Oh, yeah. I was Porter
Yeah.
Novelli.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
I know Edelman. I know. Yeah, there was like
right
there
down the
for
street.
all of you non-PR folk who are listening to Amanda and I, like, oh my God, like PR people. Yeah, there was a whole industry. There was the big players in the agency world. There were like the mid tiers. There were the more like small boutique and yeah. And so if you were like really ingrained in the PR world, you knew all the players. There was a magazine, PR Week, and there was like PR awards.
Yeah.
We were like
Yeah.
kind of incestuous, but in a fun way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, huge business in New York and a huge like familial kind of industry vibe.
Yes.
So, so I went into, at the time, the division within Edelman was called Diversified Services, and it did what my old little team at that old company did, but we did it for all the account teams within the agency. So again, our clients were kind of the account teams.
Yeah.
They would come to us with their spokesperson and the product that they were charged with getting coverage for, and we would have to create a story that would be interesting to the broadcast media. So they would usually do the print media and we would do the broadcast. And that was my gig throughout my entire PR career. I then moved to a firm that did just electronic publicity, and it was well known in the industry for being good at that niche, and I became the editorial director at that firm, which meant I was doing all the strategy with all of our clients that came to us with exactly that formula. Here's our message, here's our product, here's our spokesperson, like, do something with this and get us on TV. So that was what I was doing. And then when, I really just, and maybe you experienced this as well, I don't know, but I was really working on a lot of like FDA approvals, and then eventually, and I think that drug companies have a place and an important place in our world and in our health system. So I'm not bashing that whatsoever. But I also, had projects cross my desk I had good projects cross my desk for nonprofits. And, I did work for the American Heart Association, and I did some fun stuff with Disney and, it totally ran the gamut. But there was one moment where I got a project from an agricultural business, a company, large company, where they basically were disputing this study that came. It was like a crisis project, crisis communications, that a study came out linking their pesticide to cancer. And they were like, no, we just want to tell everyone it's not that bad. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Like, this is what I have to work on
Your
today.
values were compromised in that moment.
Yeah. And, there's two sides to every story, and you can manipulate studies to say what you want them to say, for better or for worse.
Yep.
But so I'm not saying that, they had full malintent in this case, but I was getting so disenchanted by the poor morale at the company I was working at. And then this project crossed my desk, and I literally found myself in tears at my computer, like dripping onto the keyboard. And I was like, something has got to give here.
Yeah.
And so as my dissatisfaction in my career was kind of increasing, my commitment to self-improvement and self-care was also increasing. So at that time, I found a lot of wonderful teachers and coaches, and I just became completely committed to that aspect of my life, because I knew that I wanted to go out on my own professionally and do something else, but it wasn't clear to me what that would be. Yeah. And so I kind of had this epiphany that if I was sticking here, then I needed to do something to show up better in my life, for myself and for the sake of my colleagues too. I didn't want to be the one spreading the corrosive energy throughout the office.
Which unfortunately I found was like super prevalent in the public relations world. When I was there, it was like, let's just come and bitch about our jobs.
Right.
Because so many, what I've explained to many my clients and students who've come through my doors in that industry, especially, I just had a conversation who's like, oh yes, a mastermind friend of mine, and her client was, she had a publicist come in the door. They were working on this project, and I explained to her like the publicist perspective and like I'm talking about my experience. I'm curious with you, Amanda, but what I experienced is that we were the lowest on the totem pole, in the marketing communications mix. When budgets got cut, we were the first ones to go. PR, you were the first ones to go, and so you were always like proving your value. You were always saying like, I'm worth it. We're worth it. We're doing some really great stuff. And so that meant really late hours for me anyway. Last minute, you'd be like 6 o'clock ready to go. Something would cross your desk. You have to stay. You got to cancel your plans. All this stuff. It was, to me, it just was, I couldn't do that long term. It trained me really well. I'm super grateful for that was the first like 5 years of my career, because I did an internship at Porto Novelli when I was still in school, and then I came back after I graduated, and again, super grateful for the opportunity. Huge clients, traveled the world, celebrities, budgets, all that. Right. But I found that it was just such an intense environment, and it was this whole kind of like really being at the beck and call of clients like 24/7. This is before freaking we didn't have texting or like any of that back then. And so it was just like some emails and stuff. It was nowhere near what it is now. I'd be curious to see what that world is like now. So you wanted to be different than some of the vibe that was going on at that agency. So you're like, I've got to show up better.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and just to go back to one thing that you were saying, a colleague of mine who I'm still dear friends with, we were working on a project that was for Brawny, the paper towels, and they years ago gave the Brawny man a makeover, and that was their publicity
big
stunt.
Pitch.
Yeah. And so everyone was going crazy over this project, like crazy hours, like you were saying. And my friend looks at me, and she's so funny. I won't use the expletive, but she goes, "It's an effing paper towel."
Girlfriend, I was working in PR on 9/11. I'm not sure like what our age difference is, but I remember that moment. What's that?
The same age, yeah.
Okay. I remember that moment so well, and I'm like, I am hawking candy. I'm like, really, I'm hawking candy. How am I going to pitch candy? How am I pitching candy? And it was just, again, no knock on candy. This is no offense to candy out there. If you work on candy, if that's your business, go do candy. But I wasn't here to sell candy. Like, that's just not what I'm fucking here to sell. Okay.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's just hard. You have to, I think what you and I are talking about, Amanda, you have to freaking love your product, because you got to love your product. You got to love your service. You got to love your person. Whoever it is that you're putting out there, whatever it is that you're selling, you better freaking love it, because you are going to have to work hard at it. Even when you have your own business, maybe I call my own shots around the times a day that I'm working, but there are times I'm freaking working a lot. If I'm working during a launch, forget it. Like, it's a lot. It's full on. But I love what I do, and I'm changing lives.
Right.
That's so you have to love it.
That's the message, is that you need to be able to stand behind it.
Yes.
Whatever it is you're putting out there, you have to be able to stand behind it. And so, just to kind of wrap up how I landed where I am now, it really dove into personal development and that kind of work. And I made sure that I did everything that I needed to do in order to release that job and move on in the way that I knew I needed to move on. And I know that you've mentioned Gabby Bernstein, that you've worked with her. I started working with her when she was doing these groups in an ashram on First Avenue and First Street in New York.
Wow.
When there was like 8 of us in the room.
Wow.
And so
hold up. Stay there for a moment. Stay there. I want all of our listeners to take that in. How many people were in the room?
There was like 8.
Okay. And for all you listeners, most of you who know who Gabby Bernstein is, I have studied under her. I've gone through some of her training programs. Yeah, she has a lot more than 8 in the room now. But she started with 8. And so many of our listeners, they want to start with like 300. 500. I want to have all these. And I want to have my book on the New York Times bestseller list, and so I'm not going to do anything until I have like the 500 in the room. You got to start with 1,
Such
and then
a good
2,
point.
and then get 8, and build from there. And you pour into 8 as if there were 800, 8,000, 8,000,000 in the room listening to your message. Okay, so that was
Such a good point.
Right?
Yeah. And just to even go back a little bit further, right before I started working with her, she didn't even have that ashram to collect people in. She met with people in her apartment.
Yeah,
so
she tells that story quite a bit. People come to her apartment. That's rad. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
and she has a PR background too. You know, she was really a publicist and doing that whole thing. So it was like kindred spirits. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's no mistake that she is where she is because she cultivated that business savvy. It's not just she didn't just manifest it, you know, like she really worked on it. So, and she honed a skill as well as, you know, her voice and her spiritual practice and, you know, her offerings. She really honed that skill of cultivating community, getting the word out, and trying things. You know, she tried a lot of things that also, you know, maybe didn't make it into the final cut.
Yeah.
So I started working with teachers like Gabby and other teachers in New York who I really admired. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me where I was like, I want to do what they're doing. Like whatever they're putting down, I'm picking up. I want that. Mm-hmm. And so I went and I signed up for a life coaching certification. And at the same time, I was also kind of applying this I've come to realize it was like this 3-pronged approach to just feeling better at work. I realized that I was harboring a lot of resentment toward my colleagues. So I needed to drop that and just start forgiving, forgiving myself for having resentful thoughts every single time I had a resentful thought, and forgiving them for whatever it was that, and you know, it works both ways. Like I was guilty of feeling the resentment, but they were also, you know, there were reasons why. And then, so it was, you know, forgiveness, accepting that things were not going to change. I wasn't going to bully myself into, you know, feeling better about working there. And I wasn't going to, you know, make a big enough stink that things, you know, that I was going to change the culture.
Right.
It just wasn't going to happen. So I needed to accept it. And then I committed to being the light in the workplace. So as I said, we talked about there, you know, morale is difficult. It's not always high, and you can't always change it, but you can feel differently yourself, and that can improve other people's experiences. So as I was kind of building all of that and committing to that myself, and I signed up to, you know, go in this direction and become a life coach, I actually ended up getting let go from that job. They did like a vast downsizing, and my job just wasn't there anymore. And I was like, okay,
here we go.
Exactly. And so because, you know, and this was a moment where I, in retrospect, would have done things differently, but because I was so kind of done and I just wanted to move on, I was like, this is great. I don't want to have anything to do with communications anymore. I just want to move on. I just want to be a life coach. And I, you know, kind of, I could see myself from the outside now, and I would love to say, don't you realize that this is an essential skill when you're building a business? Like, being a publicist and a PR person, like this could serve you.
And you could marry that with your coaching.
Yep.
It's not either or, but it's very common. I did the same thing when I bolted from PR, and then I bolted from conference production and just corporate in general. I was like, I'm out. See you kids later. Have fun. I'm not going to do any of that stuff anymore. You know, like I'm just that all of it doesn't work for me. And that's not true. Pieces of it didn't work, but you have to get to that realization. It does take some time. And that's the spiritual practice. That's where, you know, the forgiveness piece comes in, and the acceptance, and just a little bit of space is super helpful.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And so I cobbled together a business for those first, I would say 2 years. I was doing coaching, and I was also taking freelance communications work over that period of time. And then it so happened that I got pregnant, and I needed to figure out, I was also the breadwinner for our family. And so, you know, my husband was very supportive when I got laid off in terms of me, like, you know, following the business building dream that I had. But like, I need to figure out how to, support our family now that we were going to have a baby. And so I wrote to the executive director of the organization that held my coach training. And I said, like, this is what I did in my former life. This is, all the communication experience I have, the PR experience, the online experience. Do you guys need me? And I knew they did because just their online presence and their communications and all of that. And it turned out that he, in the back of his mind was thinking, and he said this to me, we really need someone who can help us with list building. And it was like something that he had probably just read in like an online article.
Right, right.
Like, we need to build our list. And so I was like, I can help you with that. And he gave me a request for a proposal. And as I was putting together the proposal, I actually was feeling a kind of resentment, like, I don't want to be doing this. I still, just want to be a life coach. And I came to this realization as I was putting the proposal together and it was such a lightning strike moment that I loved doing this strategy and communications work, and that I was just doing it for entities that weren't in alignment with who I was, or not even who I was, what I wanted to put out there in the world.
Yep.
And if I found the right entities to empower through communications, that this was what I was supposed to be doing. And I realized, and like the even bigger point was that I loved it more than I loved life coaching. Like getting on the phone with clients, and just doing straight up life coaching, it wasn't lighting me up the way that the other work was.
Yep.
So it was this huge moment for me, and it really set me on a course to create a truly viable, enjoyable business.
Wow, love that. And you had to go through every single one of those pieces. And I know our listeners, they're all at different points on their journey, and you have to trust in the journey, but also know that what you think might work, you try it and you're like, actually it's not, it's like maybe not jiving necessarily, and sometimes the revenues show that to us. It's just like it's not happening, it's not coming in enough, it's not sustainable. Like maybe I can do it for the next year, but after that I'm totally burning out and whatever. And so you really got to look at like where you got all of the marrying of the passion and the purpose and the feeling that, like you said, that whatever you choose to do, that you're empowering the right entities. And the right entities can be, individual clients. They can be companies. They can be couples. Like whatever your client base is. I think that's a really great way to say it. You're empowering the right entities. So is that, like, how did you then say, okay, I'm like kind of making a pivot in your business. And then did you start just taking on one-on-one client? I mean, this was like a company that you were taking on, but was it individual engagements like that? How did then the creation of Pitch School come in to be? Kind of give us a sense of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that writing the proposal for that organization and detailing for them all the things I could do to support their evolution in the online world was really kind of like the backbone to what I ended up doing. So I worked with them, and I worked with then I started realizing that the very thing that I described in what I did in that very, precise niche in the PR world was exactly what all of us as entrepreneurs have to do. We have to take our message, take our, whether it's a product or, or our service, figure out how to package that with ourselves as the spokesperson and creative story that's interesting to the media, but not just to the media. And I think this is where, there's that space in my evolution. It's really about packaging that and making it interesting to any audience that comes to your website. So, or finds your business or meets you at an event or anything. And so that's really what I started doing, was helping helping coaches primarily, but health coaches, life coaches. I've had shamanic healer as a client. I've had stylists, really anyone who has kind of like a spiritual backbone to their business, that they feel like it's really a calling. Those tend to be the people that end up becoming my clients, but really helping them boil it down and create a story that is not too heady and not too woo-woo and out there, but really speaks and brings their service or product down to earth so that it really speaks to the audience that they're trying to reach. And then from there, what we create are, then we create the about page for the website. Then we create the bio for the speaking engagement. Then we create the outreach for the media. And just to backtrack a little bit, I developed a program where I worked one-on-one with clients on developing all of that foundational material and all of the, their about page, their services, all from this basis that they were divinely, selected. I don't think that that's even a word I've ever used to describe it before, but they're uniquely qualified to provide this service because of their personal and professional journey to date. And we mine all of those details. So then we create all of the material that they need to have a business, whether it's for their website or even, like I said, just talking to someone about what you do. So you need to be able to describe who you are and what you do in a very impactful, compelling way. And so that's like the foundational work of what I do. And then from there, then we talk about, well, then how do you create ongoing streams of content to engage an audience? So what do you write about? I mean, that's like the biggest questions. Like, I know I need to write a blog, but what am I supposed to write about? So we come up with those, the kind of content that you produce for your blog is really important, because you don't want it to be this huge, overwhelming commitment on your part, but it needs to connect. So, how do we systemize that approach? And then how do we systemize your newsletter outreach so that you're nurturing your email list and your warm leads and your client base or your prospective client base? And then, from there, how do you take all of that content and translate it to social media in an effortless kind of way? Right. So with all of that, I created an online course called Create Content That Connects, which I'm actually in the process of converting that into an ebook, because and this was like another one of those epiphany moments. As a bonus to that course, I created a pitching tutorial. And when I was promoting the course, I was really playing up this pitching tutorial, because that was really my gig in the corporate world, was creating these media friendly stories. And as I was in that moment, I was like, man, I'm really enthusiastic about this pitching thing. Maybe that's what I need to be teaching, and go really niche into an online course and teach people how to pitch the media exclusively. And so that's how Pitch School evolved. It started as this tiny little add-on, and then I realized, oh wait, I'm excited. I'm really excited.
I'm most excited about that.
Right.
That's awesome. I want all of our listeners to take that in. You have to play. You have to get out there and experiment. You have to create. Don't wait until you have all the answers to do it, because you won't have all the answers ever. So you get out there, you put out, what is you feel like you're being called to create at that moment in time. And then that's the neat thing about bonuses, is that you can add on these bonuses, and you might find, like Amanda did, that wow, that is the topic that I'm freaking really pumped up about. I'm going to have a full course on that. And often it also, I've found, Amanda, it's come from, the one-on-one work. I know you had a lot of that as you were kind of getting things off the ground. You were realizing, okay, there's certain things that these clients need, and I'm excited to put them together. That's what happened for me when I was, in all my years, I too had I went I left corporate and then eventually stumbled upon the field of coaching. I was like, oh my God, this is so it. Got certified as a coach and started coaching. And at that point, I started also having children. And so the kids came into the mix, and like you, my income was really important to our family. It wasn't like, okay, Jenny, now you don't have to earn any money. I was like, no, you still have to earn money. Living in New York City, especially, my husband did not work in finance, and he left his job as an attorney way before I met him. So it's like, yeah, that was out of the question for us. So as I was doing that, I was also doing some freelance work back in my, my corporate expertise, taking those projects on, which was nice because you have some breathing room. You have some padding to figure some stuff out. And as I got deeper into my entrepreneurial journey and investing in working with mentors and guides and coaches, I realized, wow, I really like the whole online marketing, online business. Like, this is what gets me super fired up. And then eventually I would be attracting in coaching clients, and they wanted me to teach them how to develop a coaching business, an online coaching business. Like, they wanted to basically do what I was doing. And so they didn't even really know what coaching was, though, because they hadn't gone to coaching school like I had. So I'm teaching them all this stuff and giving it to them and blah, blah, blah. And then I realized, several years down the line, wait a second, because I started seeing a lot of my classmates from my coaching school coming to me, wanting to hire me, joining my programs because they weren't succeeding. They weren't succeeding. They were great coaches. They were not great marketers or entrepreneurs. They didn't know that. It wasn't adequate. We weren't adequately prepared in that way,
right.
Especially to come into the online space. It's very different than just like, oh, I'll have a company hire me for executive coaching at a high level and just have 3 clients, If you want to have courses and programs and thousands of people in your community, and then you have to play a different game. And so I realized through the request of my clients and then some of my colleagues, from the coaching world coming to me, and I realized there was a huge gap. And that was the thing that led me to create my own coaching school, because it was like, all of a sudden, you all have to realize that the universe is giving you signs all the freaking time. And you either can recognize them or you can just shut down and think that they got the wrong number. It's like, no, it's here for you for a reason. You can say yes, and it's going to feel scary. I remember for me, Amanda, when that came in, I'm like, do I have to get permission from somebody on that? How is what, really, me? And now it's the hugest piece of my business. And it hasn't even been 2 years since the inception of that. So for all you listeners out there, now's the time. You're never going to figure it out until you just get out there and go and try things. So if you could give us some of your top tips on pitching the media, what would be some of those top tips that you could quickly share with our listeners?
Sure. Yeah. So, my number one tip is just to remember that there's a lot of things just to remember. Well, the first thing I would tell you is remember that you are pitching an idea. You're not going to be pitching yourself necessarily. Right. So even when I pitched you actually to be a guest. So I gave you ideas of things that we could talk about on the air. And actually you have this wonderful questionnaire, which makes things easy. And it kind of allows the potential guest to brainstorm what they might talk about on the air with you. And I think that, if we all approached pitching cold that way, as if we were filling out a questionnaire of what would this potential guest or potential host or decision maker, producer be interested in hearing from me? That is the primary question I would want you to ask yourselves if you're pitching the media is, what does this audience need to hear from me? And that really helps you as well get outside of the niche that you think you belong in. That really shows you that you could tailor your message to any audience, to any niche beyond this tiny little shoebox you might have yourself in. So we're moms. So I could tailor my message to talk to mom business owners about how to raise their profile in their community or in the media. Yep. And I could tailor my talking points to that audience. So that's a really That's the second thing, is that you're pitching an idea, and you can take that same idea and tailor that to many different audiences, which helps you kind of broaden your reach in a big way. And the third thing that I think really would help eliminate a lot of the tension a lot of us feel around putting ourselves out there is remembering that whether it's a podcast producer, whether it's a real, I don't mean to say real, whether it's a, TV producer who's, in traditional media,
Yes,
whether it's a magazine editor, any of these folks who are in the business of providing content, they need you. They need you as much as you need them to publicize your business. So I think that helps. And Gabby actually talked about this a lot when I worked with her, was bringing people off of the pedestal. That we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. And that means we're all equal. So even though it may be perceived that that person has more influence, they have needs that you can fulfill just the same as they can fulfill your need to be on their air or featured in their publication. So I think bringing these influencers off their pedestal and realizing that you can provide something valuable to them really takes some of the bite out of the whole process of putting yourself out there.
Yeah, those are really, really awesome tips. Thank you for sharing that. Something I've also learned is that it doesn't always happen as fast as you want it to. Just because it's not happening on your timetable doesn't mean it's not happening. Right. I want to say, about 2 years ago, I started developing, I moved from New York City to the Berkshires, 6 years ago. And there's a magazine here called Berkshire Magazine. I love the magazine. It's very high quality. I like the stories, nice advertisers, all that kind of stuff. And I have become socially friendly with the editor of that magazine. We'd see each other. There's this Berkshire Festival of Women Writers. We have this really cool thing that happens here every year. And so she would kind of co-host one of these gatherings. And I'd always see her, and I'm like, well, that's the editor of Berkshire Magazine. And so I would introduce myself, and then, once a PR person, always a PR person. It's like in you.
Right.
And so, I saw a story around, like female entrepreneurship thriving in the Berkshires. And it would, again, like to your first point, I was pitching an idea. It wasn't like I am the person, I'm the only person doing this. No, because that's not that interesting. It's like I saw a story there, and I planted the seed, and we kept meaning to get together, and it just wouldn't happen. Like something would happen and we couldn't do it. We had to reschedule. And I kind of was just like, whatevs. It'll either happen or it won't. I just pretty much let it go. And what the funniest thing occurred, I had invited her. See, the thing was I was persistent. And I didn't take it personally, like, oh, she thinks I suck. She thinks, I invited her to attend a retreat I was hosting up here at a really cool resort called Cranwell. And I invited a few kind of people I thought I wanted them to know about my work and just, what we're doing up here. And she couldn't come because she was on deadline, which, of course, a lot of editors, especially in the newspaper world, they're always on deadline. But she said, thank you for the invitation. We got literally my assistants getting in touch with me the morning of, Berkshire Magazine wants to send a photographer to your event, today.
Wow.
Yes, and so they ended up, sending this fabulous photographer, got a great shot of us at the retreat. They were doing a larger story about coaches, about life coaches. A piece of what I do is, of course, connected to life, but it's very much about business and, making your mark in the world. And so they did a larger story. I was interviewed. A few other people in the community here were interviewed. And that was, it was over a year from the planting of the seed, which I thought was kind of a different angle, but I just put it out there and I surrendered. So that's what everybody has to do. Just put it out there. Have an idea. Don't get attached. If it doesn't happen right away or ever with that particular outlet, who cares? Just there'll be another one. Just pitch it around, shop it around, and trust that the right outlet, the right distribution channel will absolutely pick you up, especially on the podcasting front now, right? I mean, there's so many podcasts, and I'm excited that you're in that space, Amanda. I know for me, it's just been a lot of fun to not only, interview people, but to be interviewed myself. Get out there. I want all of our listeners, like, you're ready, like now. Like, just go. Do it before you feel ready, because you're never going to feel 100% ready. And so just go. So, Amanda, this has been extraordinary. I'd love to know the answer to our, $100 million question. What's the gutsiest move you've ever made, and how does it inspire your life and work today?
So I love this question because I actually thought about it a lot. And I think that being gutsy is like something you cultivate. So like maybe you take you make one small gutsy move that seems small in the moment, but then it kind of gives you evidence that you are gutsy and you can move to the next level. So when I was thinking about it, the first thing that popped into my head, and initially this wasn't what I thought I would say, it was that when I was 19, I studied abroad in Spain, and I didn't speak Spanish. I took like high school Spanish for 2 years, but in my head, I just always knew that I was going to study abroad in Spain, and I didn't even realize that this was a gutsy move until like maybe even after I got back. My dad said to me, when you got on that plane, you just like turned back and waved, and that was it, and you were gone. And that was a transformational experience for me as a 19-year-old, because I didn't speak the language. I'd never traveled abroad without my family. Certainly, I'd never been to Europe before that, but certainly not without my family. And it just was like, that was my like trial by fire and a real, growing up moment. But because I did that, it enabled me to kind of reference that moment as like proof that I can do whatever. Like I can, take a gutsy move and I will make it work. I will get through it. And, I think that the other gutsy thing that maybe, who knows what the ripple effect of that singular decision was back when I was 19, but the ability to trust my gut, because that was, going to Spain without any kind of Spanish education was a gutsy move. It was, and it came from my gut. Like that was a gut decision that I made. Like it just felt right to me. Being able to trust my intuition and trust my gut instincts is really such a gift. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to do that. And I think it's a gift that I give to myself that, I say like, I trust you, I trust myself. And so taking that position all these years later at that nonprofit where I was consulting on their communication strategy after I had poured years of work and training into this trajectory as a life coach, and just kind of making that pivot was another element of trust and, of trusting myself, of trusting my intuition, of trusting the universe is providing me with the right experience at the right time and these realizations, and that they're meaningful. I would say that, in the wider scheme, the ability to trust my gut is the gutsiest thing that I've ever done.
Ooh, I love that. And that's, it gives me that much more excitement that this podcast is called Get Gutsy, and that was the name of my book. And, it took me a little bit of time into the creation of this movement, to doing the work to realizing like that's what it is. And gutsy is not just, brave and being courage and like, wow. And I love when I hear the term used, like on, a lot of times it'll be used on like sporting events, like, wow, that was really gutsy move by blah, blah, blah. But it's really when you, as you just shared in the story, it's like, we all have a gut. We all have that. It's like gut instinct. It's that intuition. It's like, I just felt it in my gut. People can say that you're crazy. What? You've never been to Europe. You don't even speak Spanish. You could have people in your life who are saying that to you, but it's right. You don't need permission. And oh my gosh, do I have conversations with people? It's very much still to this day, people who I see talent, I see so much opportunity for them, and they don't trust their gut, and they're looking for approval. And we're not always going to get that, often we're not. They're looking for the blessing of this person or that person. It's like that person can't give it to you because they're freaked out. They'd never be able to do what you're about to do, that you want to do. And so if we're always looking for things externally, we'll never reach our full potential. We'll never really reach that destiny and do all the things that we were put here to do, what we were created to do. And I know for those of us who believe we are on a spiritual quest, then we'll always know that something was off, that like, and you can't escape that. And gosh, I wish that we could. And when we find the spiritual path, we realize also that we can't fucking numb anymore. And so you're like, crap, I don't even have that. I can't numb. I can't escape from this stuff anymore. And so all you've got is the truth. And there's no reason to run from it because eventually it's going to hit you in the face. So I hope that by listening to this fantastic episode today of Get Gutsy, me and Amanda talking to you, that you have realized, wow, just embrace your truth, trust your gut, and go out and do something that scares you, and really take your business to another level by leveraging public relations, pitching, all that good stuff. So listen, Amanda, how can we support your work? How can people find out more about Pitch School, your podcast? Where do you want to guide them?
Awesome. Yeah. So you can look for the Pitch Podcast on iTunes. You can find me at amandaberlin.com. And if you're interested in a pitch template that I created that will help kind of, I never advocate that people use a template to its, proposed framework or whatever. But, I do. I would say just use it as a framework.
Yes.
And input your, infuse it with your own personality and your ideas, but this will get you, from blank page fear and paralysis to something on the page, along with a cheat sheet on how to prepare to be a guest for a podcast interview. You can get that at amandaberlin.com/template download. And you can find information on Pitch School by following the link on my website, amandaberlin.com.
Great. Awesome. I like that template and cheat sheet you put together. That's really rad. So everybody go check that out, amandaberlin.com/template download. Get yourself schooled today. Every day, really, you can become more intelligent in this quest to move your mission forward. Amanda, I celebrate you. I salute all the goodness that you're putting out into the world. Always fun to talk to a PR superstar, like PR to PR.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, Jenny, I salute you as well. I honor your journey and all of the amazing, on an actual like content level, everything you're putting out there, but also the vibration that you're putting out there. It's really elevating all of us and improving our experience. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I receive that with love. I really do. Good. It's like, I receive that. I receive that. Everyone out there, go receive the blessings of life and go do something that excites you and scares you a bit today. This is Jenny Fenig sending you so much love, light, and faith as you get gutsy. I will see you next time.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Get Gutsy with Jenny Fenig. Gutsy leaders unite and ignite.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Get Gutsy as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. Are you responsible for leading and growing your spiritual business? If so, I have a free tool for you that will help you spread your message like wildfire. It's called the Sacred Marketing Puzzle, and it's a one-page PDF guide that simplifies the often mysterious and confusing world of marketing. When you use sacred marketing tools to amplify your message, you'll provide huge value to your tribe and grow your business. What are you waiting for? Go to jennyfenig.com/puzzle to get yours instantly. That's jennyfenig.com/puzzle. Gutsy leaders, unite.